book of the table of contents, look up Ezra, and then turn to that page. Turn to that page. It will be Ezra chapter 9. Ezra chapter 9. I'm going to start with verse 5. And at the evening sacrifice I arose up from my heaviness, and having rent my garments and my mantle, I fell upon my knees and spread out my hands unto the Lord my God, and said, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee, my God, for our iniquities are increased over our head, and our trespass is grown up unto the heavens. Since the days of our fathers have we been in a great trespass unto this day. And for our iniquities have we, our kings and our priests, been delivered into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to the captivity, and to a spoil, and to confusion of face, as it is this day. And now for a little space grace hath been showed from the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a nail in this holy place, that our God may lighten our eyes, and give us a little reviving in our bondage. For we were bondmen. Yet our God hath not forsaken us in our bondage, but hath extended mercy unto us in the sight of the kings of Persia, to give us a reviving, to set up his house, the house of God, and to repair the desolations thereof, and to give us a wall in Judah and in Jerusalem. Folks, here's the thing. All of Israel was beginning to come back. They were beginning to come back to Jerusalem. All of the Jews were beginning to come back in that one area. But they did know that they were still in captivity. They still knew that they had sins and they had iniquity and they were on their face before God. And then he says, and now for a little space, grace hath been shown to the Lord our God to leave us a remnant. Folks, in the Bible, what it teaches about it is a remnant of Jews. It talks about after the rapture, that there'll be a group of Jews that God saves out that don't quite believe in the Messiah yet, but after the rapture they sure will. And it's a remnant that will begin to fight the fight and begin to evangelize the world. So then we have that remnant. But folks, what I want to talk about today is, wouldn't it be amazing? Wouldn't it be amazing to have a group of Christians, whether it's this church as a whole or whether it's churches across America, which we know it is, but a group of Christians who could become a new remnant, a remnant that God could look to be those people that would teach the truth, who would go out and not only teach and preach the truth, but would help people in truth, would bring them into the truth, and would have them born again in the real gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, we know in this country, just like it was saying in here, that there are preachers and there are people falling on their face all over the place for this country and for this nation. They're falling on their face all over this country, and they're begging God to forgive us. Whether it be things like child pornography that goes on in this nation, whether it be pornography itself, whether it be adultery, whether it be all of the sins that so many people in the nation are caught up in, whether it be any of those things, that we're calling out to God for it. We're calling out to God for forgiveness. I was reading just this past week, folks. This is an amazing thing. This may bore some of you, but I want you to listen to me just for a minute. They were talking about devaluing the dollar and what that means. And I started looking at several different sources about what that means. And you know, when a country begins to spend itself and spend itself and spend itself and spend itself and borrow more and more money, things start going wrong in the world economy. Because what we have is the dollar is the world currency. The dollar is the world reserve currency. That means that, heck, you can go to any nation in the world and they kind of respect the dollar. That's beginning to change, friends. That's beginning to change. You can go in places in the world and they won't even accept American dollars. There are places in the world that won't accept American credit cards because it's based in American dollars. You've got to somehow go and get this stuff converted to their money. They won't even accept what it is you're bringing to them. There are nations in this world right now that won't accept it even at their tourist attractions. India, there are some tourist attractions in India that say, no, we're not going to take U.S. dollars. Why? They're becoming more and more worthless. The dollar's bunking. Well, what happens, Ryan? What do you mean what happens? Well, when the dollar devalues, just bear with me. When the dollar devalues, this is what happens. Inflation begins to soar. Your gas prices, your food prices, all these other things, all your commodities, everything begins to soar. And what do? The interest rates begin to go up. They go up to 6, they go up to 7, they go up to 8, and all of a sudden your dollar becomes more and more and more worthless until they print more and more and more money, and we end up in the same situation. Folks, if the world today decides, just out of the blue, decides without us knowing that they won't use the dollar as the world's reserve currency, we're finished. We're finished. You can hang it up. You better learn to grow food in the garden. You say that'll never happen. Well, friends, it's happened to many nations around the world. It's happened to many nations around the world. And hey, the credit goes to both parties, friends. They both spin like they can. I'm not trying to be political here. I'm trying to tell you that the nation is at a crossroads, friends, and it all comes down to not the wallet and not that dollar bill, but it comes down to our following of Jesus Christ. Will there be a remnant when all of this stuff begins to happen, when people are suffering? Folks, Mark Dix just told me just a couple of, I said something about it last week, but he told me when ice storm came and people were going into Kroger that they were practically fighting one another for food. That was over sleet. And yet we look to what the Bible says will happen. Look, I'm not one of those people that says the end of the world is now. I'm not. It may very well be now, but it may be 200 years from now. But what I can tell you is, you better prepare yourself, friends. Prepare yourself to be what God's called you to be. And it has nothing to do with a lot of the things that we do today. It has nothing to do with fluff. It doesn't have to do with my best life now. It has nothing to do with my life at all. It has to do with Jesus' life. There is no best life now. The best life's to come. The best life for people is to come. And folks, we need a remnant. First, the Christian remnant must be holy. Now, I've said it a million times. I'm probably the worst one in here. But the fact of the matter is, God expects us more and more to be more and more like Christ. Do you know that this remnant I'm talking about, they'd be the type of people that can go into a dark room with a candle and can have the Bible and read the Bible and never go outside and tell you exactly what's going on in the world outside. They wouldn't need the news. You could just read the Bible and tell you exactly what's happening in the schools. And they could read the Bible and they could tell you exactly what's happening in the governments. And they could read the Bible and they could tell you exactly what's going on in all of the world around us. We live in holiness in order to actually change the world. The world can smell a fake. They can. You just try it. They can smell a fake. Let me give you an example. My wife got me some cologne for Christmas. Because she thinks it smells good, she got me some cologne. But a few months ago, hey, we're in dire straits. We got money problems too, you know. We got money problems too. She went and bought me a cologne. She said it smells a lot like it. It was cheap. No joke. And I don't care. I mean, I don't care. If it makes her happy, I'll wear it. And so, not women's clothing now. That doesn't make her happy. But I'll wear cologne. I'll wear cologne if it makes her happy. And so we put it on, and she just come around me and she say, "You stink." And I'm trying to smell good for her. You know, I'm putting it on. I'm all walking around her. Hey. And I'm letting the air kind of come by. I'm walking around a circle around her, trying to get that air around her, you know, and all. And she said, "You stink." I'm like, "Doggone, you bought it for me." So then she went and bought some cologne that she really thought smelled good. She went and did that. Folks, people can smell a fake. You can smell you from a mile away, folks. There's no need in us going out there and talking the lingo. There's no need in me going out there and saying, "Oh, Jesus saves," and then live like the devil. There's no need in it, folks. Just don't bother. Because they can smell a fake, folks. Just last week, I was sitting there and I was pumping diesel into a big plastic can, and I had the nozzle down on there. And what I didn't know was a fat nozzle, and it was beginning to build up air pressure in it and everything. And so I was just having a good time. All of a sudden, I take it off, and diesel blew all over me. I mean, I was covered in diesel, and man, diesel, you know, it stinks. Hey, I went to the job office. I went inside and I said, "Ladies," I said, "Y'all got any T-shirts in there?" "Yeah, we got T-shirts." And they began opening doors and windows. This is no joke. Opening doors and windows. Folks, do you know holiness is a perfume to God? It's a perfume. The Word of God teaches us that it's a wonderful smell to Him. It's an odor. It's like sacrifices coming up to Him. And the holiness we have in our life, it goes up to God, and He smells this. But folks, He smells a fake. The remnant can't, folks, when we get to where our nation has nothing but God, when we get to where our nation doesn't have a dollar anymore, folks, do you know there are places in America today that use things other than a dollar? It is not the law. It is not the law, friends, that you have to use U.S. dollars in the United States. There are places in America that use the Berkshire. They use all kinds of money. There's people who are using a barter system where, hey, you just do this for me, I'll do that for you. It's starting to happen, folks. But, folks, when that finally happens, the remnant can't be just regular folks. The remnant can't be regular folks. We can't be grabbing each other and tearing each other apart. We got to be working together to show people how they can be saved. We got to show people what really matters in life. Look, I like everything just like you do. I like it all. Listen, I liked TV last night until the Falcons started losing so bad. I've never turned off a Falcon game until last night. Turned it slap off, but I love those things. I love the television. I love them. Folks, I heard a story. Listen to me. I heard a story. It was a preacher talking about his son had been in paintball tournament, X-ball tournament. Now, those things are the ones that fire 13 balls a second. Those guns are firing those suckers. But he was watching it. 5 men on each team. They were out there, 5 men on each team, and they were fighting one, and his son was on one. And the coaches would yell down instructions because you could hide behind all kinds of obstacles out there. And they would holler out instructions. Hey, he's behind this one. Turn. Hey, shoot here. Shoot there. But then the preacher noticed something. He said, all of a sudden, there was people on the other side who were watching on the other side who were telling them the wrong information. They'd say, no, he's over there. He's over here. He's over there. And so you had to listen very closely for your coach. And it's just like in the real world, folks. It's called counter-coaching. It's called counter-coaching. Because he asked his son about it. He said, that didn't seem very fair. He said, no, that's part of it. It's called counter-coaching. Because while my coach is trying to tell me something to do, all these other people are trying to tell me something else to do. Oh, the spiritual inference is easy. All you say is, look, I've got a God who's telling me these things to do and the life to live out there, and yet I won't do it because I keep hearing these other voices out there. I get so confused, and I think, is that God? Is that not God? Is this God? Because Ryan's not spending time in His Word, I don't know whether it's even His voice or not. And so it says counter-coaching. We don't need to listen to the counter-coaching. We need to listen to the coaching. Many of us have rewritten Ephesians. Listen to this. Now, look, I carry around this. Scott Stewart, who's not here today, but he gave me this for Christmas. It's a very heavy medallion. It has the armor of God on one side, and it explains the armor of God on the outside. Very nice medallion. I keep that with me. But folks, this is what we've said about the armor of God. We say, lay back and relax, then with a belt of evasion buckled loosely around your waist, with a breastplate of defensiveness in place, and with your feet fitted with the pluralism that offends no one. Pluralism. That means you can get there besides Jesus. There's got to be a way besides Jesus to get to heaven. I mean, it only makes sense. He's a God of love. So really, probably, when you have an opportunity to die, He's probably at the last minute going to say, you know what, I love you, you're coming to heaven. That's a lie. Folks, it's not the Bible. There are some very, very prominent pastors in our nation who say Jesus is one of the ways. Very prominent pastors who say Jesus is one of the ways. It is impossible to believe us. Take the helmet of entitlement and bludgeon of the flesh, which is the word of anger, and air what's been done to you on all occasions with all the criticisms and complaints. Instead of the armor of God, we've got the anger of ourselves, and we go out there and we use that instead of being holy for God. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I love them. But there's a little thing called Gollum. Probably the ugliest creature ever made for a movie. But Gollum used to be a hobbit, but he got so seduced by the power of that ring and by power itself that it began to deteriorate him. It began to deteriorate him. The sin and evil began to deteriorate him, and he became just just a worthless creature. And so many of us in this life get seduced by the things of the world. Whether it's power, whether it's money, whether it's all of these things. Folks, when it comes down to it, the remnant can't do that anymore. We can't be seduced by the things of the world anymore. If we're going to be a part of a new remnant, now Israel's remnant's never going to change. That's God's real remnant. I'm talking about people who will stand for the truth, who will fight for the truth, and who will go out into the world and say, none of this matters anymore. None of this matters anymore. I am going to fight for what is true. And folks, when God sees your life, and God begins to see that you're trying to live more and more like Christ, that odor comes up of a sweet perfume. And then He begins to use you in ways you never thought. Folks, guess what? It's going to get tough. Because the Christian remnant has to be holy, but the Christian remnant have to be prayer warriors. Miss Jenny Cox, she sent around a paper not too long ago. Will you pray for the church? Will you set up time to pray for the church? She's got people praying all over. She sends out prayer requests. She's on top of all this, folks, and she's praying, folks. There's a